Hey, what up, jerks? Welcome, welcome. I'm still on a little bit of a rubber ducky high, a rubber ducky high from last night with Rita Lombardi and Susan Harrington and all of you crazy people who were watching last night. That was so much fun with you last night. It was fun. I took like 3 nights off, and then that was the first show that we did in a while. And tonight we have another show, and then I'm going to take another break, and then we're going to get ready for Karen Reed trial when that starts up. But tonight we're going to stick with Canton. It's what we were doing last night. We were covering the election, the select board election last night with Rita Lombardi, and it was the incumbent, 36-year incumbent. How often do you see this? A 36-year incumbent losing his reelection. Doesn't happen often. It happened last night. Susan Harrington, a very special candidate. She's a veterinarian. We saw her last night. She's amazing. We're looking forward to seeing Susan Harrington. Congratulations to her and all her supporters and the campaign in Canton. On Tuesday, we'll see her at the Canton Select Board as Select Board member. Susan Harrington. She's been sworn in since last night. It's very happy about that. That was great. It's going to be interesting to see what happens to the police chief and the police department over there. We're talking tonight about the Canton police audit. And this police audit that was just kind of dropped, and people have been talking about it a lot. And I've kind of been on break and I haven't got my chance to say too much about it. But the fact that I felt like it was Chat GPT, that it was based on a lot of what already came out at the select board public comment. You heard a lot of the public comment from the speakers there, a lot of the stuff that they revealed in the public comment. It was in the police audit, some of it, some of the stuff that was said on the show, but not too much new. Not too much new. I was speaking to the guest in the green room, the first guest we're going to have on tonight. He's been on the show before. He's a good friend, retired Massachusetts State Police Officer Todd McGee. He said it was very surface level. That's what I would say. It's very surface level. Seemed very rushed. And the presentation after, a lot lacking. And I think we're going to talk about it. I want to get to the guest. I think the guests are going to have a lot to say about it. But you're getting my feeling already on this. Let's bring up the guest. We have, very happy to have him back on the show. 508 Group. He's also a frequent guest on LTL. He's LTL's boy, as I call him. They're like brothers. I can tell these guys have a deep relationship now working there. Respect. And so wicked happy to have him back on the show. We're also going to have Rob D'Amico on the show, former FBI, ex-FBI special agent, Sierra One Consulting at 6 p.m. Right now, we're going to bring up the retired Massachusetts State Police, Todd McGee. Welcome back to the show, Todd.
Yes, sir.
How you doing tonight?
We got a lot to talk about. Doing good, my friend. Doing really good.
Yeah, you called it, what did you call it? Surface level. Is that what, did I get that right?
Yeah, that's a fair description. My original thought was, 206-page report in the amount of time that they had. Seemed significant, looked pretty thorough as far as, they went beyond the policies and procedures of the department. They touched on the different cases that are happening right now in Canton. But then I started to reflect and go a little deeper, and there's still a lot of stuff missing that they really could have dove into in the report.
Yeah. What kind of things would you want to see in a report like that? A little deeper.
Yeah, let's start with the solo cups. They made reference to not having the appropriate resources for collecting evidence, and that's fine, as you would expect that to come out. But then I would think that you want to go into why. Why is it important to have these types of proper resources? Things like cross contamination, things like evidence collection, chain of custody. All of that was part of the flawed investigation. Also, just doing a little research, Canton Police Department is an accredited agency. accreditation is a massive achievement for any police department. But also, you have to maintain those standards once you get the certification. And I didn't see any reference to that inside of the report. So think the glaring flaws would be enough to be decertified based on some of these different shortcomings that we know about that came out during trial 1.0.
We had two meetings basically. One with the committee. The committee, they answered a few questions. That got kind of contentious between the board members. But then they had the public meeting where they answered some questions from the public, both Canton citizens and people from other towns. What did you think about that meeting? That second hearing,
Yeah,
especially.
yeah. In watching that, and we can talk about retired Sergeant Murphy here shortly, but um, the audience participation was very good. Unfortunately, they had a very tight timeline in providing a platform for the community to be able to ask their questions. I thought that there were times when there were questions that they didn't want to answer, and they kind of skirted some of those different questions and kind of gave the canned response. I think that there were people, as you could see in the chat, a lot of people were looking for corruption. They wanted the report to call out corruption within the department. That's neither here or there. Whatever the findings were, if you're on a fact finding mission, you have to report what you find. But as far as corruption goes, it seems like a lot of the people were hoping that was going to reveal itself.
It was kind of an editorial bent on it. Did you like a lot of times too? It seemed like they were blaming the citizens, and there was a lot of editorializing about that. Did you
Yeah,
get a sense of that?
I got a sense of deflection. I got a sense that they're a good organization that needs some adjustments and some changes, and I don't think that's fair. I think they could have gone a lot stronger in their language, a lot stronger in their assessment, and sometimes you just need to call a spade a spade. And I didn't see that in their presentation or in the report itself.
Either. I would expect maybe in writing it'd be one way and in person be a little different, but it was just all the same. It was
Well, you're not there. Their role isn't there. To chop heads off. They're there to make an assessment. An audit is an audit. It is what it is. And if there are some hard lined recommendations or some hard line things that need to be called out, that's what you were hired for. That's why you were paid $200,000 to be able to present this information to the community, to their credit, that called for the audit to begin with. And you've got to bring whatever exposure that prevails itself within the audit. You've got to bring it forward, put it in writing, and then you've got to debrief about it.
there's been a lot of comments like this. Big old dog, he says it was excuses and a defense of the CPD, and I'll just jumping off on that. If we consider that, consider that. Why? Because I feel like that's exactly what they were doing, and so often they were quoting the police officers. They weren't really talking to the community members. They were talking to the police officers, quoting them about how bad morale was. Um, why do you think they went that route? Is it just for the money, the laziness of it, the deadline, to kind of just have to get something out there? Or is it more what a lot of people think is somehow they're sold out, they're in on it? What do you think, Todd?
I'm going to go a different direction. I think kind of the unspoken word was the here we are. The report was released days before trial 2.0, and that report has significant impact. Even as it's presented now, it has significant impact to the trial. Had they gone with harsher language and maybe a more hard-lined approach in their response to the audit, it could have even been that much more impactful to the trial. So I think that they were trying to weigh that. I think they were trying to be like a neutral party in their audit, and I think that hurt the. I don't want to say it hurt the integrity of the report, but it certainly didn't give it the full gravitas that they presented themselves as capable of delivering.
I'm getting people telling me my mic is too low or yours is too high. I don't know. Do you have
Yeah,
a
I
way to
can hear
turn
you.
yours down a little bit, Todd? 'Cause I turned mine
Yeah,
all the way up. I don't know if it's I may have to get a new mic. I got a fancy mic, and I think it turns me down too low, actually.
I just adjusted my mic. Hopefully
All
that's
right.
better.
All right. All right. So if people saying they're watching on the TV, it's fine. All right. Sometimes people micromanage too, so I don't know. I have no idea until I listen to it later. All right, cool. We're fine. Everyone's saying my volume's fine.
Good to
I did
go.
have issues last night with my mic. I heard that. Um, but thank you, the chat, for letting us know. So I guess Canton citizens kind of feel ripped off right now. Like a lot of them, they feel like they spent this money. There's really not a lot to show. Um, what would you say? What would you say to them? Talking with Canton
Yeah,
residents right
and
now.
yeah, I commend the citizens of Canton and some of the other residents from the different cities and towns that went there to support and really push their town council to bring this forward. That's courageous. We saw how volatile those you know select board meetings were over the last several months, and that's not how you want to see your town or your city communicate with your leadership. um, but I can see where some Canton residents would be disappointed, and I again I don't want to say that there should have been corruption found and reported. If there was certainly corruption there, then yes, absolutely, 100% without a doubt, that should have made its way into the body of the report. But I think short of that, there was definitely more accountability, Mike. I think that's the best way to put it. More accountability that I think Canton residents were looking for. There was a sense of nothing to see here, couple of minor adjustments, and the department will be fine. I don't know. I don't know. I would take issue with that assessment.
It's interesting. One of the things I didn't expect to get highlighted so much in that meeting was the dog that died in the police officer's car.
Yeah.
Um, John Como was asking a bunch of questions about that, and later after the meeting, John Como, or maybe even before, I'm not sure, but he had posted a bunch of incidents where they did actually charge people for the very same thing. So there were like incidents where they didn't charge people, and that's what was in the police audit, or the police audit guys used and said. But there were other instances when they did actually charge people, apparently. John's got them. He posted links to them. There were like news stories about charges against people. Um, what about that whole discretion thing? And even the fact that this audit committee, I mean, well, not the audit committee, the audit team, whoever these guys are, Five Stones Intelligence, they're basically saying everything the police department says, but then it doesn't actually check out when the citizens check up on it. What do you think about that, Todd?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, Mike. The discretionary practice, it's going to come back to bite because you're showing favoritism. And when people start to peel back the layers and they start to lift up rocks to see what's under them, well, there's some things that probably folks would not rather come out and not have the light of day touch it. So if you're towing the line and you find a way to enforce something that's fair and equitable for everybody, you got to stick with it. if the rules apply to some and not all, eventually it's going to come back to bite. And here we are. And you never
We
know
did
how
come.
it's going to show up. That's the other thing. You never know how those hidden bones are going to show up.
You know when too, right? When and
That's right.
where, how.
Timing.
It's one of those things that showed up definitely this year was the Sandra Birchmore stuff. Um, what do you think about their kind of what they reported on Sandra Birchmore in this whole thing? Because I didn't see a lot. What did you think about their? Because that seems like the biggest, like besides Karen Reed, that should be like the biggest thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
You know, one of the presenters from the audit team had made a statement that we work in jurisdictions where, there's 3 murders by lunchtime in much more violent communities. And Canton, fortunately, is not a community like that. But they've got 3 major incidents happening all pretty much at the same time. And the response has been a lot to be desired. And, to again chalk it up to the investigators maybe need some advanced team, some advanced training, and the department needs more equipment. That's that's barely scratching the surface. We know that already. What about the practices? The flawed investigation. Did were procedurally speaking, were things not followed? And so that's what the report should have been able to call out, not just that there's a limited training within the agency. You got to go. People's lives are on the line here. And if you had a proper investigation in the John O'Keefe situation, we might have a completely and entirely different outcome.
Specifics. You got to get down to the brass tacks, as they say. You got to get down to
Brass
the nitty
tacks.
gritty. You got to get down to the details, the receipts. Like every single thing has to be included and reported. And it really, considering how long it was, there wasn't a lot there, was there?
No, the report gave them a pass on the Birchmere case, and um, it was that's where you're looking for. Once you get past the internal policies and procedures of things, if they're going to examine that area, you know, it probably would have been a miss had they not investigated those cases. But if you're going to report on it, you got to report the whole thing. You just can't surface level chalk it up to a few misgivings and then move on to the next topic. You got to dive in deep. You got to go all in, and you got to report what the issues are. And if any of the Canton residents are frowning on this report, it's in the lack of specificity.
Now, when this application came out for the audit itself with the town of Canton, Larry Smith, he's a contractor, former Mass State Police like yourself. He put out a public letter to them, basically saying this isn't going to work for a variety of reasons: the scope, the time, the dollars behind it. He predicted it would be basically a failure the way it was set up, basically set up to lose. Um, he seems like he's right now in a way on this to a lot of us. Was he right? Do you think like the whole thing was like seems like it was screwed up from go?
Yeah, Mike, I looked at the RFP myself as a contractor, and I had interest in maybe pursuing it, putting together a team that we could be able to meet the scope of work. Larry was spot on. I was an academy instructor when Larry went through, so I know Larry very well. Good man. He's doing some great work in his private consulting life. But Larry was very articulate in talking about, again, you had mentioned uh, around the area of the scope of work, the timeline. This needed at least a 6 month, maybe a 9 month window in order to be thorough enough to get all the interviews in, to be able to go through the department's uh, rules, regulations, policies, procedures, looking at their calls for service, looking at how many arrests, looking at how many investigations, looking at how many public interactions. That has its own kind of body of work that needs to be looked into. And any time you're talking about a longer scope of work and time, then that means more financial resources are needed. So I don't know if it means it would have been a 300, 400, or $600,000 assessment, but it would have been a lot more than what was allocated for this project.
Like, it's seems like it was rushed, very rushed.
That timeline was very tight, extremely
Yeah.
tight.
It's
And I don't
interesting
know if
how it came out just days before they have the public meeting the Saturday, two days before the election for the town select board that's highly contested, with the police chief's job on the line, basically becoming a campaign issue. And between these two candidates, that became one of the big campaign issues. Do they want to renew the police chief's contract? And here it is. It gets released that Saturday. It to me, that is pretty interesting.
yeah, the timing for sure is very interesting. And again, you've got the trial that kicked off on Monday. I'm sorry, Tuesday, April 1st, with jury selection starting. You've got the town vote for the selectman's office. It just, again, you've got to question why it was designed the way it was designed from the beginning, right? So all your set dates, right? We knew the start of the trial months ago. On the calendar when you're going to have your town votes, and then you're given this very narrow timeline in the scope of work. I don't know. I think something was something. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but that the time that it was given for the scope of work, that was by design.
Definitely seems like that. It's hard when you don't want to be a conspiracy theory guy, but everything is so crazy. It's like I'm the guy trying to be sane, and all my audience is telling me like, dude, you see this? You see this? Like the judge thing, the whole Canoni. We've been talking about this with Betterow for months. Is she just
Yep.
bad at her job? Like you want to be reasonable, but we got. I think Peter Murphy's in the chat tonight. I want to bring up Peter Murphy because this, that meeting that they had, especially with the citizens, and some of them were non-citizens, they didn't treat Sergeant Peter Murphy well. And I just thought that was really kind of shameful. We also have Rob D'Amico in the green room, so I do want to bring him up in a second. But what do you think about that, Todd? The way that they treated Sergeant Peter Murphy, especially when he had some good suggestions that they should have done open forum like that a couple times during this audit process.
Yeah. It didn't come up when Peter Murphy went and spoke at the mic. Again, I commend him for the perspective that he brought forward and he shared. But as a man with 30 plus years of service, worked for the town, has obviously operational knowledge of all things within the department, had a little bit more to share about some private conversations, and shared what he could. And I just felt like he was dismissed. He would have been a perfect person that the audit team was. That was a miss. If they didn't interview
Yeah, I
him,
want to
that
know.
was a
Actually, I
miss.
should have asked him. Did they talk to
Yeah,
him even? Did they even
yeah.
talk to
Hopefully
Peter
he can
Murphy?
confirm that, whether they did or didn't. Had they not interviewed him, that was a big miss.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought that was really kind of cheap too. Like they just on a human level, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Especially
I
that
mean,
he had a good suggestion too for them. They should have done a public forum, at least one or two.
yeah, yeah. Something where you've got a more friendlier timeline for those people that have things that they want answered, and
People
that's
feel heard.
yeah,
They feel
that's
like they're
right.
contributing to the whole thing. Let's bring up.
Absolutely.
We have retired FBI agent Robert D'Amico He's with Sierra One Consulting. We have Todd McGee here with 508 Group. We're going to bring them both up together right now. Let's bring up, he's a returning guest. Wicked excited to have him back. Robert D'Amico. You may see him on MSNBC, CNN. I see him on. He's all over television. Hey, Rob, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good. People are all amped up because they saw you on one of these. They saw you on another. Actually, I think it was News Nation. You've been on so many channels, I got mixed up, but you were on one of them.
Yeah, I was on Ashley Banfield on News Nation.
Yeah. So you said some stuff about this police audit, and everyone was tagging me. You got to get Rob back on. I guess it was spicy. What's your take on this whole police audit thing?
Well, I heard a little bit of Todd, and I think he hit it on the nose. One, the statement of work was off. The timing, I couldn't believe they only paid $200,000 for this, because if you look at like my hourly rate to go in and do this, it would have been, I mean, that's only so much time that you're trying to hire this company to do this, and only 3 months. And then the biggest thing is they don't have the hammer of, when you interview someone for law enforcement, like when I was in FBI, if you lied to me, that's a 5-year felony. So as I talk to someone, I always kind of remind them, like, hey, just let you know, when you talk to me, the official statement you're giving me, if you lie to me, that's 5 years. Not that that's prosecuted much, but it is that overhang that people have to tell you the truth. So if I have an auditor coming in, then I know that I don't have any penalty for telling him a lie or not what what I believe. It's really hard to get the truth. And everyone in this department knew exactly what they wanted out of this. And when you go in and talk to them, they're going to tell you, oh yes, we do this and we do that. And I thought the findings were fluff. They're very vanilla. They, in their report, they couldn't thank the leadership of the town enough for giving them the opportunity to do this. And then the first 10 minutes of their presentation was about how all they did was look at, what was in the statement of work and how they followed it, and how they weren't going back to reinvestigate anything. So it was a done conclusion before it even started, I think.
Yeah, Rob, spot on. I was sharing with Mike offline that my initial assessment of the report was, okay, they had 90 days to put together 206 pages. They had a lot of areas that they looked at internally. They looked at some of the high profile investigations that are going on, trial and investigation, when you talk about the Canton retrial as well as the Birchmore case. But then I'm like, something's missing here. It's like there's the depth of the interviews and within the scope of work that they had, they could have gone so much deeper and presented, and again, I was saying earlier how, there were some people that were probably looking for evidence of corruption within the police department. And, I don't know if that was going to be, part of the outcome, but certainly an opportunity to say, hey, here are the shortcomings and why, and how they impacted where we're at today. So that second part, I think, was really, really absent in their reporting in the audit.
I think they brought it. There was no depth to it. It was very, very, top, no depth in the interviews, no depth in really what was wrong. When you talk about using a leaf blower in a crime scene and you say that was, they were resourceful. Are you okay, when you look at a crime scene, the placement of everything is really important. And you're bringing a leaf blower in to melt snow, I guess, was the resourceful part. I'm like, well, you guys didn't think of heaters and, and stuff like that, and keeping the crime scene clean. And you just said that was resourceful. And I'm like, really, such a vanilla statement, resourceful. You use Dixie cups or what, the red Solo cups. That's resourceful. No, it's not. And that's a basic, if you're a detective, I get it, a patrol guy that gets on the scene and you have some chaotic event and you're just trying to do something before evidence is ruined. okay, I get that. Like, a patrolman came up and the car's about to, catch fire, and you capture some evidence in a red Solo cup might be resourceful, but not to a detective that's coming in. I get it. There was a blizzard. But you're in an area that snows a lot. Did you never have to do a crime scene in the snow before? They make plenty of pop-up tents, and they make heaters, and and that's the first thing I thought of. You melt the snow down and you have tents over it, protecting those initial scenes. So the word resourceful on using a, leaf blower, I'm like, again, it's vanilla. And then some of the other spicy things. I know the company that did this. I had some prior interactions with them, and I just didn't find them very.
What kind of interactions? Because we found that the crowd. I'm going to show you, gentlemen, some stuff that the Twitter users found on them recently about their owner. That I don't know if you know about.
Show it away.
I would like to hear. What's that?
Show it. Please show it. Yeah, I like this.
Could we hear from you first? Like, what kind of? Because we're all.
I was in a company that was involved in horse racing, and Five Stones was involved in some of those investigations. And I just found their practices not very sound, and some like shocking things that I just like I don't know how as an investigator you do certain things along those lines. I don't know that the two persons that spoke the other day on it. But I always say that, your leadership dictates how a company's done and how things are done. That goes down. So I can see that transpiring lower.
Wow. Yeah, there was this let me share it up here. All right, there's this post. There's a few posts actually, but here's just one of them. This is about the owner of the company, David Tinsley, like who's called DT here. In this report, he was dubbed a fixer in 2022. This is a report from UK independent investigation, and we have it. Well, I could show it up on the screen here. Here it is. This report here. He was named a fixer, and it's a wild case. And the guy who wrote the report is like serious. His name's Sir David Calvert Smith. He's a former prosecutor, a major prosecutor in the UK. So it seems very credible, and it's like kind of wild. So this guy has been named a fixer by a former prosecutor in the UK, the owner of the company. So I thought that was interesting. It's kind of scandalous.
Yeah, even like I said, Ashley Banford had said, so I forget what the website was, a Christian Judeo investigative service. Like, again, nothing against it. I just never seen a company come out as their website that a Christian Judeo or something like that along those lines, investigative intelligence firm. And she thought it's odd too. But again, I have
That almost sounds like it's a spy firm or something.
Well, everyone wants to sound, everyone
Yeah.
wants to sound that way to a point. But like I said, I have personal experience and found some of the work suspect in as far as true how you do things and how you should do things. So when I saw they got it, and then I saw the amount of money they got and the time frame, it doesn't add up to what I see as a great, like I said, I thought it was from the get-go, we knew what the answer was going to be.
We have Canton citizens who are watching, definitely. And one of the questions from Jay Mansfield, I think it's a perfect question. Is there anything that you think that the citizens can do about all this? And like, what would you suggest they, if anything, do at this point? We'll start with Todd first, and then we'll go to Rob.
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind is, identify the gaps in the audit and do a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. Maybe there's a way to gather more information if they feel that a certain part of the audit was deficient in. That's one way to get answers. But then once you go down that road, you got to be prepared to kind of get nothing back, and then be prepared to do the follow-up appeals and all those other things. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
The biggest thing a citizen can do is vote. So anyone that's, and unfortunately, I think you said the chief was up for, is it
So
was the
interesting.
chief elected or is he up
No,
for his
what
job?
happened was there was an election yesterday, and it was a select board candidate, 36-year incumbent who was supporting this police chief versus a challenger, a woman, a veterinarian. I believe she's probably a first-time candidate, but she's involved in some of the town boards. Very accomplished woman. She wants to possibly replace this police chief. She ran on it. She beat him. She beat him by over 1,000 votes
See?
yesterday.
So right there,
Impressive.
that's the thing. Like you don't like what's going on. You start putting candidates and some of these. Well, I hate politicians in general. Like because once they get voted in, their whole premise now is to get reelected. And I dealt with a lot of members of Congress when I ran FBI ops in Afghanistan. I briefed, I think it was 150, 175 congressmen and senators over there. And you could always tell the new ones came in like lots of good questions, even on both sides of the aisle. It didn't matter. They just had questions. And all the senior ones came in and they'd ask you a question and you would answer it. And then they say, well, don't you mean this? I look at them. I'm like, no, that's not what I said at all. They're looking for a soundbite to take back to DC. They have an agenda and everything about them is getting reelected. And that's where I think the biggest power thing in DC needs to be term limits. Like you take it away
Terms
where
you think they changed? Like when you were
Congress
meeting
wasn't
them?
meant to be like a 50-year career. And we don't need anyone at like 96 running any decisions in the country. There are some good 96-year-olds out there, but like, hey, and then their individual wealth, they go into Congress, and then all of a sudden, somehow they miraculously make great investment decisions and they're worth $20 million and they're getting paid a government salary like $200,000. And somehow they made 18 times more than that on investments. I doubt it. So it's the same thing when you go to small towns. It's a incestuous group that just keeps getting reelected, and you just start like she did. She said, "Okay, I'm going to run against you," and then you pick out the next one that's going on, and you bring in people that truly aren't doing it for whatever reasons the other ones are, and then hopefully that they'll say, "I did my 2 terms, I'm out." Type of thing. I had a good friend of mine at a town I grew up in, and he was a construction guy, and he got on the board. And after like 3 years, he's like, it was so bad. He's like, I'm off. Like, I just can't take it anymore because everyone wants to, oh, you vote for this guy and this guy will do this type of thing. So that's the biggest thing, vote. And then as you said, like freedom of information, getting the information that's out there. But the statement of work kind of set this whole thing up to begin with. So, you kind of go and look at that and say, well, who did that? Who was really responsible for that? They might've said, oh, because of our, they set the amount for it, which I thought was really low personally. Not that the taxpayers wanted to pay more, but the taxpayers wanted the truth. If the truth cost $500,000 instead of BS that cost $200,000, I think they could have swallowed that to a point. But when you get this $200,000, pile of whatever, like I said, you could have wrote it before you started. They would have felt better, at least if they got the truth out of it.
Mike, I think another thing is accountability, right? So the audit called for what I would call a lot of low hanging fruit as far as their recommendations. Let's see how they do in 12 months. Let's see how many of those different recommendations were enacted upon.
Especially the cell phones. That's a big one. These guys are using their personal cell phones,
Yeah.
Not good for chain of custody or anything,
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like having been in FBI, I always had 2 cell phones. It was always a pain, but you always had 2. I mean, you had a work cell phone and the FBI's one, you couldn't even download many apps and stuff. But you're seeing it with with other, people out there that use their personal phone. But again, the problem is when you have a corporate phone or a company phone or a government phone, you have no expectation of privacy. They can take it anytime, and they can look at it. And they should be like, there should be software on there looking what you do, so to speak. And yeah, they can use their personal cell phone, but a lot of times they're like lazy and they just, go out. And you see that from the texts in the trial that came out. Like, if they had, government phones that they knew could be audited and looked at and everything else, where they'd be sending those texts. And again, they could have used their personal cell phone, but when you make them sign the policy that all government business will be conducted on your government cell phone, and if you violate it, it's 5 days off, no pay. Like and then the next time you do it, it's 30 days off, no pay. And then you have to hold people accountable, as Todd said. That's the biggest thing with this. Like, you can have policies, if you don't enforce them, if you know that no one enforces them, then you don't really worry about them.
Question that came up, the statement on Sally Port camera still being used as is inverted. What did you guys think about that? Do you think that's even a big deal at this point?
Well, the biggest part of the Sallyport cameras in the first trial was that it wasn't disclosed, right? So
Right.
so what is the true image of what people are looking at? That's just kind of like, basics on some of the disclosure rules. So it then gives the appearance that, there are shenanigans at play. So, did the audit call out how many cameras, how many are mirrored cameras? Okay, so now maybe there's more of a level playing field going into the second trial, because we know that the examination of Karen Reed's vehicle is going to be another part of the trial. So, I just think that disclosure is everything. They've got the prosecution, if that's what they're using and leveraging in the trial to strengthen their case, they have to be transparent.
You want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, Todd said, the biggest thing was if they said up front, like, look, these cameras are inverted, so everything you're seeing is actually like this. It's the way we got it off the hard drive or whatever, explaining why it's like that. But also you could probably go to a video person to actually flip it around and do whatever. But to get called out after is one of those things. Like, it looks so bad. It looks unprofessional at the best, and then it looks deceptive at the worst. And anytime you're putting something in front of a jury and you look deceptive, especially as a government, like that's that, it takes so long to earn trust and it takes about 2 seconds to lose it. And that's one of those things that you can't get caught in. You shouldn't. I think some of those things were huge factors in what happened. Because okay, if he's BSing me about this, what else is he lying to me about? It's one of those things. It just starts going downhill, and then you don't trust him at all.
Especially layer that on top of all the other deficiencies and inadequacies within the investigation. It's just not a good look.
It's funny. I dealt with the Navy SEALs a lot, and when they went in to rescue Jessica Buchanan, who was captured by pirates, and they free falled in from like 25,000 feet in like 30-mile-an-hour winds. A few miles away, they walked in and they end up killing all 9 of the pirates and saving her and her partner there that was also kidnapped. And at the time, a lot of times we have FBI accompany them in for evidence type things. We did it in Libya on some of the things. On this op, we couldn't get any of the FBI guys in. So I said, hey, when you take your phones in, come right back to me, because there's still possibly people that could be prosecuted for this crime that weren't killed. Like they could have been helping them and stuff like that. So any of the photos we can, use as possible evidence type of thing. And they come back, and the one SEAL's given me the compact flash card, and I put it in the computer to copy it and bring it over, to give to the case agent. And I see by the numbers that there was a picture deleted. And I said, dude, what'd you do? He goes, oh, I accidentally took a picture of my shoe and I just deleted it. And I said, oh, look, I said, I don't care if it's a picture of your private parts. I said other words, obviously. I don't care if it's a picture of that, because I can explain to a jury how you're goofing around and took whatever picture, but a deleted picture allows the defense to tell the jury that deleted picture is everything exculpatory to my client, and you deleted it because you knew it. So a deleted picture is harder to explain than like a jackass picture, so to speak. And he's like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And again, that's when you're in front of juries and stuff, because you give that defense, like if there's anything deleted like that, you give that defense the ability to write the story of what they can say that's in there that you can't disprove because it's deleted or it's gone or it's not there. So it's one of those things that compounds itself by, like, my thing is like, okay, they lied to you about the video. What else are they lying to you about? What else did they deceive you in this trial? Is a simple question. Yeah. And then it goes into like, wow, he's right. Like, what else could they have lied to me about?
Yeah, there's more stuff in the video too, because like, especially in the report, it came out really short on this stuff about the video, where they store it, what the process is, because it's like what's been going on in the court didn't match up with the report.
Mike, you mentioned earlier about Sergeant Murphy, Peter Murphy. In some of his interviews, he had talked about having a conversation with someone inside, a technician of some sort inside Canton PD, who was asked to remove the tail lens. Right. So again, that falls right in line with what Rob is saying, that, if there are untold stories, or if there are things that cannot be fully explained, again, not a good look for the prosecution.
Yeah, like even I think beyond even Peter Murphy, who they should have definitely spoken to. I don't know if they did and got that information, and they should have. I feel like they should have talked to the Karen Reed lawyers, because the Karen Reed attorneys could have pointed in so many directions at certain things that are going on in this trial that don't match up with what the Canton police were telling them. Like, especially about the way they stored that video. The Sally Port video and the other videos where all of a sudden they have new video all of a sudden of the ATF agent Higgins that they didn't have before. Like, there's so much going on there. And in court, they said the storage was police officer that retired, his personal drive. In the report, that's not what it says in the audit. So it didn't match up to what we're seeing in court. So I think that's strange. Like, I think there's so many things they could have followed up on. And I don't think, just like Rob said, when you ask the police and they have no threat of going to jail, a one-sided response, you're not going to get the full truth. You got to talk to everybody.
Anything on a personal drive right there is just like, what? Like, are you kidding? Like, seriously, like you have a Sally Port, and again, you're knowingly putting things of evidence in there. And there's standards on digital evidence. It's not like it's hidden. So anytime anyone says anything personal, like, well, that's craziness in itself, but you should, like, all that stuff that goes into a video is like, when we do phones and stuff like that, the original is never touched. You make like 3 forensic copies of it, and then you have one to analyze, to look through and do everything else. The other one is hashtagged as, like, so it's any changes to it is noted. And so there's a whole like digital evidence protocols that if you're any of your cameras that could any ability to take something of evidence, it gets stored in a manner that can't be touched. And then you have it duplicated, and then you can compare the hashtags, but you always look through the duplicate and you never look through the original at all. And you always have a forensic copy of the original too, so that you don't touch, so you can bring it back. So, I mean, those are just, again, standards that law enforcement's done for a long time. And there's plenty of things out there that tell you how to do it. So anytime someone says something was on my personal drive, in something like that, you're like, how can that even be?
Yeah. Raises eyebrows for sure. There was another issue that came up on the Sallyport videos, that the motion, the video cameras click on for motion, and it wasn't clear. Is there a 5-second lag, 2-second lag, 10-second lag? You know, the mirrored video. I remember Alan Jackson in the first trial trying to get Proctor to testify. Is that you? Is that your image in the video? So again, just all of those different aspects just again raise more questions than providing answers.
Definitely. Yeah, just so much to this that I felt like is incomplete in this report.
Yeah, I mean, there's things going to happen all the time during cases that aren't normal. And again, as Todd was saying, you have to, when you present it, anything you present that has something like that, for whatever reason, you explain it right up front. You say you're going to see a video. It actually is reversed so that the image, we tried to unreverse it or something, and for some reason couldn't. So it is reversed. So everything on your left is on your right. You explain it to them, all of it, so you can't get caught later on with that. And again, the government is the one that has to present that, virgin pure case to them. Like, you never, as the government, ever want to get something like the things that happen over and over again in the trial, where you got caught with something like that's not the government. The defense, they can do all those things, and people just kind of like, oh, that's a defense. He's trying to, save his client and stuff. The government, it's one of those things, like, this is what happened. This is the evidence we have of it. If it's telling the story, and that's it. Like, you have to be so much above everything else, and all the other stuff should come from the defense, in that they're just trying to find, ways to do things, but it shouldn't be on the government side, the law enforcement side at all.
Peter Murphy's in the chat. We did post the link if Peter wants to jump up and make a comment tonight. His name's been brought up several times, and he's in the chat. But he made a comment here, and I think it's an important one. He says it takes decades to nurture a culture within a law enforcement organization, and it will be proliferated. It only changes when you bring in new leadership from outside the force. What do you two think? Should the new select board, since there's going to be a new member now, it's a brand new select board, in some respects, especially the power dynamics, should they renew the chief's contract? Should they even renew it for 6 months to a year, just so they have time to find a new chief, or should they search for a new chief, or from the outside, or should they hire someone from within? How do you think that should work? What do you think with what Peter Murphy's saying?
Take a look at the Mass State Police. Governor Healy hired for the first time outside of the Massachusetts ranking structure, rank file and structure, with bringing in Jeffrey Noble. She wanted to change, and to Peter's point, going from outside the agency to bring in that sense of a different vision, different leadership styles, is the opportunity to make that impact. So, as far as retaining her, you've got your number two that's in charge, give them the interim designation, and then do your nationwide search to bring the right personality into the agency.
What do you think, Rob?
I think perception's a big thing. So when you get rid of the person in charge, and don't try to drag it on, just do it. And that says something to the force. And then you go out and whoever you bring in, because everything is about leadership, and it all goes down. And the problem is, inside an organization, it's a culture that gets, again, it self-induces it, the culture. And if you bring someone up from it's just one of those things that's going to happen. Like, oh, I know so-and-so. And, I remember in the Marines, I always tried to, like, when we had a Lance Corporal going up to a corporal. So you're going from a guy that does the work, and my good Lance Corporals were always really good at getting out of work, and then once you make corporal, you're supposed to be the one that like holds the, hey, guys get over here and do this, and you were just, slacking off with those guys before. So I always thought it was good to, if a guy was getting promoted, to put him in a whole different squad. So he didn't have buddies in the squad. He didn't have like that, like they knew him as the class clown or something like that. And it gave him the ability to start fresh. And it gave his, the people there that, oh, my buddy's turned his back on me because he's now the guy in charge. And it kind of goes the same way. So I think, look, even if you thought she was doing a good job, I think the everything that's ingrained in that, you need a change, and you have to start with that. And they got to understand that the force has to understand you are doing the change. You're going to do the hard thing. You get rid of them. You put a term in how long you're going to find them. And then I would even look at, again, who's ever taking that acting position. You may bring someone in to be acting even outside the department. And then you have the third one as the one that understands the department, that can talk about, keeping the clock moving in the right direction, so to speak, with the shifts and stuff. But I like to bring in, almost two, because that really sends a message. And if you're really looking to do that, and if you have real big problems, and I think this department does, that would be necessary.
Even with a smaller department, like 50 personnel, you still have an operations side and you have an admin side. And to Rob's point, you split up those duties and those responsibilities. Looking at some of the information pulling from the audit report, they made reference to a policy and procedure that was dated 2013. I mean, policies and procedures need to be looked at. And even if there's not a change to the policy, you still have to have someone look at it to make sure it's relevant and it's in alignment with contemporary policing practices. As an accredited agency, they should know that.
And that's one thing you can give to you, like, depending on how many, like your lieutenants and captains and stuff, like that's, again, it's a career enhancing, broadening thing. Like, okay, part of your thing is you're going to look at these 5 policies. You're going to see what's in Massachusetts, what the state regulations are. You're going to see what nationally is, maybe send them to a conference and do other things to really find out, is that policy still current? And then if it is, you even put in paragraphs in there after it saying, hey, on this date, on 2025, this policy was looked at and we compared it to this, and this. It is still, within the absolute law enforcement standards nationally and in the state. Or even if you find something that's a little bit different, say, well, we looked at it and there was some differences here, but we think applicable to this state, like justify it to a point. And again, you have people coming up in the department that need to take projects like this on. Again, we always did that on some of the teams I was with, like the hostage rescue team. We constantly looked at, we called them TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. We always looked at it, and we always had someone, hey, is this relevant anymore? Is this still working? Is there something else out in the community that other people are doing? We'd send them to different units in the Army, in the Navy and stuff like that, and say, hey, go find out what they're doing for close quarters battle with L-shaped rooms. Is anyone doing anything different? Because you get stagnant if you're not really looking to make sure that what you're doing is right.
And Rob, there's times when those policies and procedures are impacted because of legal action. Something happened in the courts.
Yep.
That forced a change. And if you're not caught up on all those different policies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's a big thing. And technology and all the other things, like technology can change court's opinion, like before, like with thermal imagery, and, the courts found that is intrusive, the violation of the Fourth Amendment. Is that still standard? And having your lieutenants and captains looking at court actions, I think also really helps her, professional education, in that they're looking like, hey, what's current? What are the courts currently saying about this on how we do it? Or or interviews always taped, or interviews always at the police. That was one of the things, like all interviews should be at the, down at the police department. Well, I always take a statement on site, because you want to get the first thing they say. And then you kind of hold them to it. Like they already have a story. So if they start changing it after, but it's also the easiest to recollect at that time, but they may think of something else. So it may be, has the court said anything about that? Like a statement made off record, or you always do it in there? What are the court saying? And making sure that, you're in conjunction with what's currently legally out there, and maybe even bringing in, having, both the prosecution and the defense side. Are you going to any conferences with that, where they're talking about it? Like, are you seeing what's happening in courts, how they arguing, especially if some defense attorney wins a case, even if it doesn't set court standards and stuff, but he wins a case that you lost? Are you looking at what really happened, or especially when they interview the juries and stuff, based on police procedures?
Rob, when I was in the fire marshal's office, state police fire marshal's office, when we took witness statements, just like you just described out in the field, we would take their statement, and again, in the spirit of transparency, even if there was a mistake that was made in writing, you'd always have the witness go back and read their statement to make sure it was accurate. If there was a mistake made, it was a single line through the mistake, not a scribble, because it gave the appearance that you were hiding something, right?
Yeah.
So single line, and then you would initial it, and then no harm, no foul. To your earlier point, that can be explained.
Yeah.
Keep a record of everything. That's the point, right? You keep your records like anything else. It's like, well, I'm about to file my taxes. You got to keep all the records. You got to keep everything. Todd McGee is with 508 Group, and Rob D'Amico is with Sierra One Consulting. We're pinning them throughout the show in the chat, so you definitely check those guys out, their websites, and follow them. I want to thank you guys so much. Todd McGee is a retired Massachusetts State Police. How many years were you with the Mass State Police, Todd?
24.
24 years with the Mass State Police. And we have Rob D'Amico, who's a retired FBI special agent, and also like a chief, like director level. And it was like unmanned. What was that? Unmanned, like drones. Basically. What's the official title?
I was the chief of FBI's counter drone unit, unmanned aerial systems unit.
That's a long one. That's like, it's technical too. You're like,
yeah, I was on I couldn't believe
guy.
how much I was on the news with all the New Jersey drone things. I was I think in like 2 weeks I was on 25 different news stations on drones, which I would have never thought.
I asked you about that too when you were on the first time, about like the UFO thing. Because you think, like, you might know, you FBI drones. I don't know. What do you think's going on with all those reports? Actually, is it just people being crazy? So I even posted something, and it turned out it was like a star. We figured it out. It was like that star is only there for a certain minute, like, and it goes away. Like, I didn't realize that you can only see stars for a minute, and that's what I recorded. It went away. It was so wild. So, like, is it like that stuff?
The first time I went out with the counter drone unit, I pointed up. I'm like, oh, there's one. They're like, and it was at night, and then they're like, no, sir, that's a shooting star. I'm like, oh, I'm like, well, there's one. They're like, that's actually an airplane. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, that's definitely one. They're like, oh, that's a low flying satellite. And again, we had all the different charts out there. So when you start looking up at the sky, like, go out at night and look up at the sky, and there's so much up there that you don't realize is moving. A ton of them are planes, manned ones. A ton of them are low flying satellites and stars and planets and all this other stuff. And then recently, within probably a year or two, the FAA did lessen the restriction to fly drones at night. Before, you had to have a waiver, and now you just have to have the proper lighting. And then once the politicians started getting out and telling people to go look for drones, then everyone started seeing drones because they're looking for them, and most of them weren't. And then, as my quote in the Wall Street Journal, the first time I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the guy had called me like late at night, like 11 at night, and up talking to him about 45 minutes, and I probably had a bourbon. And at one point I said, look, I was a smart jackass teenager in New Jersey, and I did plenty of stuff. And if I was one there right now, I'd be flying drones over my sheriff's office. I'd be flying it over the mayor's house. Anyone else who's like talking about seeing drones, I'd be flying drones over there, because New Jersey full of like kids like I was, and that was my quote in the Wall Street Journal. So I think it was a combination of everything, and you're starting now to not hear about as much. But if you look up in the sky, there's a bunch up there, and not all of them are drones, and especially the ones that quote are the size of cars, I don't believe in. So that's again is another whole podcast that I've done.
So funny, because there's a movie or thing on Netflix called "Don't Look Up." It's like all of a sudden everyone did look up and they saw something.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone did look up at once. It's like when you're looking, you do see stuff. I mean, that's the funniest thing about it. So it's very interesting. I'm so glad you guys were here tonight. I want to ask you more about the Karen Reed retrial, because that's coming up. And I'm just wondering, how will this police audit come up? Will it be used by the prosecution and the defense, or neither? Do you think it will come up, the police audit and the Karen Reed retrial?
Todd, do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So I think there's some low-hanging fruit that the Karen Reed defense team will utilize. Again, we can all agree that it was a surface level report. However, there are some inadequacies that the audit team picked up, and I think it's useful information that the defense team can leverage. So how strategically, where they cherry pick what they might want to introduce, will be more of a strategy session for them. Maybe there's certain parts of the report that they want to reserve for, cross-examination for anyone from Canton PD, from those early investigators and detectives that went out to 34 Fairview. That might be part of a strategy. But certainly information's information. And one thing we learned about this trial is that the gathering and collection of new information for this new trial, that seems to be a major effort on the part of the both defense and prosecution.
Yeah, I think the same thing with Todd. Defense is going to have to pick and choose what they think is the most damning, because that's what you want to put the torpedo in. So whatever they think is going to be the most damning is then they wanted to find something in the audit that finds the discrepancy, or whatever the audit found as lacking in sticking to policy and procedure, to really hit those points that they think. You can't just keep bringing up, because they'll get sick of that. They'll be like, okay, we've heard this enough. So you really want to save it for the parts that you think are going to be the most damning in the trial. And I think they can probably figure that out, and that's going to be the key. But you just don't want to keep over and over and over again, because I even think in the first trial there's some points that they, the typical phrase, don't beat a dead horse, so to speak. Say it at the time, and then in the closing, then you can really go into it, because again, you don't have to, it's not testimony, it's your closing arguments, and you can really go into the audit, and you can spin it the way you want. And I think, though, the prosecution would be smart to bring up the elephant in the room at times, and say, look, we understand, yes, there were some things in the report, and maybe opening statements, maybe closing, or it may be like during other things, but I think it would be good to, again, address the elephant in the room, get it out front, because they've heard about it. That it's going to be brought up. And if you bring it up and you talk about it, then it's not as bad. They're actually talking about it. So I think the prosecution would be smart to actually bring it up too.
Mike, we lost you. Your mic.
Is going to ask this question. Five Stones, do you think they would actually be witnesses to testify for the prosecution, maybe even?
I mean, every scenario is on the table. you know, ba- based on their debrief from their from their town hall meeting, I don't know how much value they're going to bring if they continue with the same posture that they had during the town meeting. So
And as a good defense attorney will crush them. You know, you can ask all the things that we talked about them. Did you have anything? Did they have any reason not to lie to you? Was there any way that they could be prosecuted if they lied to you? Like all those asking questions. Were you allowed to even look at the evidence in a case? Were you again? I think it would be bad for the prosecution to put them up there.
Let's ask about another possible witness, Michael Proctor. I know you guys both know about him. Is the prosecution going to put him on the stand? Should they? Why should they, or why shouldn't they? What are the positives and negatives for the defense to put him on the stand?
you know, Rob called it the elephant in the room. That's the other elephant in the room. I think like trial 1.0, he ripped the Band-Aid off. Get him in there early, go through it. You know, defense is ready. They're going to have their cross. They're going to eviscerate him during that cross examination. But if prosecution doesn't call him, you know 100% that the defense is going to call him, and that I think that's going to put the prosecution behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, that's right on the mark. And as a prosecution, rip the Band-Aid off and address everything that's going to negatively come out. If you address it, then they're going to say, well, it can't be that bad. The prosecution's actually bringing out and talking about it, and it just takes that got you away from the defense being able to do it. And then you already seen how he's been ripped apart once, so you kind of predict on those things, so you can actually do his testimony around that and talk about it, and bring it out again. If the prosecution brings it out, I don't think the jury thinks it's as bad. Like, well, they're talking about it in their prosecution, so it can't be as bad as I think.
If they have any chance of minimizing the impact of Michael Proctor, again, to Rob's point, they gotta get him out there first, and go through all the painstaking testimony that's going to be brought up.
Yeah, this whole thing is like everyone knows what's out there, so it's now getting the jury to perceive, it's really theater compared to even before, because there's not many surprises in this, like, so it's going to be how you get the information to the jury, and their perception of you and presenting it is the biggest thing in this. So again, if the jury didn't bring him out and they're like, hoping he doesn't come up, the defense is, and the defense can then present this and like, oh my God. But if the prosecution does it, again, they're going to look at it like, well, they're the prosecution. They wouldn't bring out something that was so negative, like that was bad. Like, they're admitting to certain things. So this one really is theater compared to even the first one.
Speaking of the first one compared to this one, there's new witnesses for the defense, especially, but there's also new prosecution witnesses. But one of them was also a former FBI guy like yourself, Rob, named Michael Easter, and he was supposed to speak on policies and procedures and investigations. How investigations should be conducted. The judge didn't let him testify. I was interested to hear what you think about that. And do you know Michael Easter, either of you guys? We'll start with Rob.
I don't.
No, I don't know him either.
So he was supposed to testify in the first trial?
No, the new trial, the retrial.
Okay.
So he's a he was supposed to be a new witness for the second trial.
Yeah,
and
he's
the judge
based on the
won't
West
let him
Coast.
testify.
Yeah, he's based on the West Coast. And again, just the nature of the work, as an FBI agent, which is near and dear to you, Rob. His experience was to testify about the inadequacies of the investigation, both on the part of Canton PD and MSP.
And she's saying that it should be common, like that you don't need an expert because the jury should be able to figure out on their own what he would testify to.
Well, yeah, again, I mean, the defense is going to have to point out everything during when they're testifying about the investigation, the judges, like, if you're not going to allow that expert to testify how investigation should go, then I think the judge is going to have to allow the defense to, when something in that person's testimony is about the investigation, and you want to say how it's not like the norm to do it that way, they're going to have to allow that then. So I think some of that was cut out on the first one. So again, if you're not going to allow that one person to testify how investigation should go, defense is going to have to attack everyone who comes in about the investigation. And when there was something that wasn't right about it, allow the defense to go into why it wasn't right and how a normal investigation should go. And you may be able to get them in after that. Like, if they testify that their investigation was good and that they did it according to procedure or something, then I think you can bring in like, now you're saying that, well, look, I need an expert witness to say why the prosecution's witness who said this investigation went well, why it's not the norm. So maybe the advanced one of doing it, but now if you have a prosecution witness saying that the investigation was fine, then you can bring someone in to say, no, it actually wasn't. I'm an expert in doing investigations, and these were the faults that laid into it. So we'll see how that goes.
Excellent. Last time you were on, I think, Rob, we introduced you to Mizzy, and we were talking about
Yeah.
Sandra Birchmore. I know Todd's talked about it too. He knows a lot about Sandra Birchmore, both of you. I mean, did you know, Todd and I had talked a little bit about it, about the report, the audit. Did you feel like they didn't do enough on Sandra Birchmore in that audit report?
They didn't, and the problem was, I mean, with Sandra's case, it was really, the other police department that was so bad. Like again, though, the fault in Canton wasn't, some of it was the procedures a little bit, but it was also, I think there was a lot of, how do you explain it? Knowing that a cop was involved with her, there was things that weren't done right. And that's really hard to prove. That's like, it's one of those things like, oh yeah, she killed herself. And you look at the scene with the hanging on a doorknob type of thing. Like, really? Like, and all so that's a perception in the police officers that were processing the scene. And it's really hard to get them to say, oh yeah, I mean, it looked shady as shit to me. But yeah, she was dating a cop, so I wasn't going to look at it. No one's going to say that. Like, that's not going to come out in this. So, and then the real, like, the horrible things that happened to her weren't from the Canton Police Department. How she was, the whole thing through the teen stuff. I mean, that was just unbelievable stuff. Wasn't Canton. Canton was after the fact. And I think all the things that happened with that would have been really hard to prove in an audit. In this, and especially the way the audit was done, I think an internal investigation needed to be done, like where you had that ability to do stuff. But again, when something's in someone's mind, it's really hard to pull out, like conspiracy and stuff like that. Like, did you not dig enough because you knew that she was involved with the cop? I don't think that's going to come out in many interviews.
Yeah, my take on it is that, the audit had its own scope of work, and to investigate the John O'Keefe in Karen Reed trial, and this Birchmore and connection of to Falmore, that's involved. Those are active. They're going to trial. How much actual information is an audit team going to really examine, put it to writing, and give it any really justice, to those people looking for answers? Just kind of seemed like maybe they should have let that go and not touch that part of the audit. Shouldn't have gone that far into that scope of work.
Yeah, an investigation into either one of those even by like federal agencies, could last a year. Like you're asking a team to come in to cover all of this in what was it, 3 months, and
Right.
for $200,000, like that's not going to happen. Those investigations, they need time, and you need the ability to have testimony that if it's false, it's perjury, or it's a violation of the law.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that the auditors are kind of limited, and when they interview the police, because the police don't have to tell them the truth, so no penalty.
Well,
I guess
you're a fact finder, right? Even like an
like a
investigation.
reporter. It's like
you're
what we do.
Yeah,
I mean,
you follow the information that you have available to you. You put it in a write-up, but you see it through thoroughly, all the way through, not scratch the surface, because you're left with more questions than answers.
I'm just reading some of the comments, but I'm also thinking Todd's got to go pretty soon. But one more question I want to ask tonight on all of this is like, if you're just elected to the select board of Canton Police or Canton, if you're Susan Harrington, she just got elected to the Canton Select Board. There's a new select board basically because it's a different configuration. What's your advice to them on how to handle these Canton police issues? What should they be doing, since they're the bosses? The Canton Select Board are the boss of the Canton Police Chief. How should they be handling things to kind of calm the citizens, but make sure that the police force is in a stronger place, both with training and proper procedure and ethics and everything else? What should they be doing? Let's go to Todd first.
Starts with a strategic plan. This new select person, she's going to need help. She's coming in with new ideas, new thoughts, new vision. She's going to need help. If you can memorialize a strategic plan, what's going to happen within the town and within the police department over the next 3 to 5 years, that at least sets a goal. And if you can set that goal, then you start hitting the objectives to meet that goal. And then from there, you're starting to get that public trust again. You're starting to get that sense of morale being boosted up within the police department. But that's where leadership is going to have to take this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Todd said, like you have a 100-meter target, and then you have a bunch of, you have the 5-meter target, the 10-meter target. You can't go from, this to that. And then also the select board, the other members of it need to understand that their jobs are on the line too, that like, hey, they need to change. And just like the police department, it's like in New World Order, so to speak. Like if you don't really start doing your job as this, then we're going to get other people to run against you. And just like the last one lost it, you can lose yours. So there has to be something, that there always has to be, the carrot and the stick, so to speak. And then the police force really needs to understand, like, this really is a change. And the person you bring in, like the moral character and their standing in that has to be such, like, you got to get that right person to come in. And it's like, and their initial talk to them has to be like, yeah, the old way's gone. Like either you start getting with us and you start understanding this. And again, the police department, it's one of those like cultures that the new guys come in and the old guys really dictate on how they see things. And there's plenty of movies on it. Some of them are over dramatic type of thing, but you really have to understand, as a new cop or new FBI agent, you looked at your mentor and they told you how things were done. And then you're like, oh, okay, type of thing. And to go against that, like, the moral courage in that is really like significant. And you have to get over that. It is not, that ship does not steer, very quickly, so to speak. And they have to understand that it's going to be like this for a long time. And it's not going back to the way it was.
Look at that Denzel movie when you said that, like when he was
That's the one I was thinking of. It's one of those.
Training
Yep.
Day.
And that's what I was thinking of. And unfortunately, it's one of those things. Um, it's people don't go into police work to go on the wrong side. It's not like that why they join. It's then they get in, and then they're like, again, it's the mentorship and it's a senior leadership that does that. And it's not everywhere, but it's one of those things that they got to understand. Um, the moral correctness and the ability to say no is really tough in those situations.
What about the rank and file guys who are a lot of them? Some of them are leaving. They just lost a Canton police officer to another. I think Stoughton actually, which is interesting. But
Yeah, they're going to lateral
like
out to other opportunities
yeah.
with different cities and towns. So once you get
What's
the academy behind them, they're good to go.
what's the advice to the rank and file in Canton who are feeling the morale is low, the town doesn't like them? How can they kind of be more positive and change things, you think?
I think I always put this on the PD and members of the PD. You've got to cross that bridge. You got to communicate with the people that you're protecting and serving in that community, and you got to start finding some allies. And it doesn't mean that you have a free bitch session. It means you stand up, you do your job, you be fair and equitable when you interact with the general public. You look after your citizens. And I used to say to recruits in the academy, people are going to need your help way before they need your handcuffs. And so there's an opportunity to build that trust. And there's an opportunity to build that rapport within your community. And I think if you're going to sit in a cruiser behind the mobile data terminal and not interact with the general public, you're doing yourself a disservice.
It's the
Great
little
points.
things that matter. Like you
Huge.
said, you see some of these videos, and I always say, like, hey, as police officers, um, if you want the kudos for doing like really good stuff, you also have to take the heat for things that aren't right. But you look at some of these videos about the police officers coming and end up playing basketball with the kids on the street and doing things like it's the little things that matter. um and you're not going to win it all back in one thing. Again, like football, it's one of those things like if you're down 21 points, there's no score that scores 21, and there's like 5 yards here, 5 yards there, go back a couple yards. It's little things that you do and interact with the public that starts getting that trust back. And all you can do is the right thing, and the right thing has to, like, every time you look at something, if you're doing like what you think is the right thing, why you join, look back to why you joined the police department. You didn't join it to be where you're at now, so to speak. Go back to what really got you there. And then just when you deal with people, always understand. I always dealt with people. How would I want to be treated? Even in some of the really worst situations, I've had people I put in handcuffs thank me later, the way I treated them. I didn't do it with pedophiles or murderers, so to speak, but everyone else I kind of did. And some of them I brought back as sources that would then call me and stuff like that. But even some of these guys that are out there. So when you're dealing with someone, even if you're arresting them to a point, depending on their level of violence back to you or whatever, don't not be safe, but treat people with respect and how you would think you'd want to be treated, or how would you want your son to be treated, or your daughter, or your loved one, or whatever. And that really kind of brings it back to understanding why you're on the street to begin with.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Any final thoughts that you want to share on the audit or Karen Reed trial or Sandra Birchmore, anything that we've been talking about tonight? We'll start with Todd McGee first.
Thanks, Mike. And Rob, a pleasure being a co-panelist with you for the first time. I hope we do another one together soon.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks. Just here we are. It looks like the jurors, the assembly of jurors it's coming together faster than anticipated, which is great. Trial 2.0 will be underway here. So, let's continue to examine like we did in the trial. I think we're all that are in this space, we're all a little bit more knowledgeable about the ebbs and flows of the prosecution, the defense as it relates to the Karen Reed trial. So a lot more to talk about in the coming days and weeks ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Todd. And Rob D'Amico.
It's going to be interesting since it's the second trial. Like I think everyone already has their opinions. But the biggest thing to do is to go into everything with an open mind. Like even if you have an opinion on something, listen to the people testifying on both sides and see is there a difference, and then look at the perception, how this is being presented, because I think that's the key thing, having done this once and where they're at, and try to notice the difference between it. If you can remember how the prosecution went at one, because a lot of witnesses are going to be saying how the prosecution presented one witness, what's the difference now, how the defense is maybe different in the questioning. I think that will really give you insight to both the prosecution side and the defense's side on this one, on how the difference between how they're dealing with the people testifying. And again, like I'm just hoping some of the other things that come out of this whole mess of multiple, situations, justice just comes out in so many different ways. It's one of those things. You just want the truth to come out. You want, justice to be served. As I always said, I would rather have a guilty person walking on the streets than an innocent person in jail, because I can't imagine being innocent and being in jail. I see those people that get out after 20 or 30 years when something, and I'm like, how are you not the most bitter person in the world, so to speak, from that?
It's just, when you hear the stories, the personal stories of these people, 30 plus years, just unbelievable. I want to thank you again so much for being here. You both are on LinkedIn. I know that. Rob D'Amico, Sierra One Consulting, and Todd McGee with the 508 Group. You guys are both on LinkedIn. You can follow them there. What other places are you guys on social media where people can follow you? Or is that it? Or are you just on LinkedIn? I know you have websites too.
I'm
Shout out
actually
your
going to
websites.
be starting a podcast.
Oh, wow.
So Inside the Line with Rob, probably towards the end of the month, be looking at doing the first episode, and it's more inside both, the tagline was inside the blue line, but based on a bunch of different experiences I had, bringing people that are inside to all kinds of different things and just talking to them about that insight that they have that others may want to look into.
Awesome. I can't wait to promote that. Let us know. We'll have you on again too. When you have some episodes, we can promote it, and definitely
I
get
appreciate
you
it.
some more followers. I love what you do. And again, thank you so much. Todd, do you have anything you want to promote tonight too?
No, I'm just glad to be back on the channel, Mike. I have done, as you know, some different shows with Brian on LTL Media. So I love the work you guys do. You level set your audience. You're bringing really good clarity into this space. So I always appreciate being a part of that.
Thank you guys so much. It's my honor to have you both on here tonight. Todd McGee, Rob D'Amico. Have a great rest of your week here.
Thank you.
Guys.
You too.
Take care.
I know. We're the Young Jerks, and great to have those guys on here. I never thought when I was doing a podcast I'd have like former Mass State Police and FBI. It's amazing. It's amazing, these platforms. So you get to have a conversation with these guys. And Rob some of the stories that you hear from them, I feel like I've lived a boring life compared to some of these guys. It's pretty amazing. I just want to thank them. Obviously, I want to thank our super chatters tonight. I want to thank Dennis and Chrissy. Chrissy Bacon said I am dubious that we will ever get any accountability for real justice. The audit was a joke. I think things aren't like so black and white. I think sometimes it's gray, and I think progress takes time, and we're fighting for it, and we're just gonna keep going. There's gonna be ups and downs and victories. Yesterday, there was some kind of accountability and justice when Susan won yesterday. Even the last election, we didn't win both races, but we won one. So out of the last three Canton Select Board elections, basically for the seats, we've won 2 out of 3. So that's some accountability. And I think the next elections are going to be more accountability. And last night was so big because it was so overwhelming. Like, this guy is the chairman, 36-year incumbent, should never lose, never loses ever. And he just didn't lose by like 100 votes like I expected. I thought it was going to be a close race. It was a blowout. It was like, so I think that was some accountability. I love Rob brought that up too about voting tonight, because that's a big part of it. It's not just voting too. It's like, getting the word out, doing shows, doing standouts, doing what Rita does. Rita, and doing what Susan Harrington did, knocking on doors, and the people running the campaign and volunteering. So it's up to us. That's basically what it comes down to. They're not going to do it for us. We have to do it for us. And that's what we're doing. I mean, that's what's been going on for the last 2 years. Break sometimes. I have to take 3 or 4 nights off because I just can't. I was going every night. I was going every night because I see us making progress, on a lot of these issues. I'm looking forward to the Karen Reed trial too. Meatball Morrissey sent $9.99. It says this is why I didn't read this one when the guys were on, because I appreciate it though. It says, in my humble opinion, the most accurate portion of that audit was showing that the CPD officers are a bunch of entitled, whiny little kitties. And I love and respect the police, just not the CPD. I get the feeling. I understand where you're coming from. I do. I want to thank you so much, Meatball Morrissey's Sketty Stain. I said it. I did say it. I laugh at all your handles and your names. I think it's funny. I love it. Thank you guys so much, and ladies, for supporting. There was some super chats that came in last night's show. Not super chats, Venmos that I missed. So I got to thank them right now. I want to thank Mike. Mike knows who he is. Mike H. He said $25 last night for the select board campaign results show we did with Rita last night. He says tonight was a huge loss for the dedicated swallowers of fascism in Canton. No bullet vote shenanigans. So Mike was very happy, like I was last night, about that election result. We also had Janice W. She said $20 last night as well. And she said, so excited for Canton. You helped this happen. We all did. I want to thank the audience, the supporters, everyone that was involved in last night and what we're trying to do here. Congratulations. Let's keep doing more. Thank you, Jane, for the comment tonight. Yes, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, our moderators, MJ, Sarah, and Shock and Horror, Jeno, Stephanie, and Scott McGinnis. I think I saw most of them in the chat tonight. We have the best mod team. I love them. I love my mods. I love that it's four awesome ladies and one dude. That's diversity. All right, I gotta go. I'm saying too much. I'm saying too many jokes tonight that are probably going to be used against me. I'm too chill tonight. I don't know if you noticed. I took 3 nights off, and now I got the rubber duckies. I got the rubber duckies going. We're gonna have some rubber ducky fun tonight. Oh, what's going on here? This. See, I love JFK, and if it was about the shows, I wouldn't say anything. But about my mod team, come on. You might have a bias, Bukaki. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure. I know JFK. I'm pretty sure that his mod team is probably awesome because I know JFK. I know how he rolls. Like, he's not gonna have anyone shitty on his mod team. I know that. I'd say we're tied then. I'd say because I'm gonna guess he is an A+ mod team. We do too. So I love JFK too. I love his show. I love him. I'm a big JFK guy. JFK show off. All right. All right, I'm gonna take a few nights off now. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear Bukaki Duck for, especially since We're always flying the ducks over here. They're at 39,000 feet. Are they flying? Do their rubber duckies fly at 39,000 feet? I can't even say it. Do their rubber duckies fly at 39,000 feet? Prepare for takeoff. I don't know what I'm doing here. We're elevated. I'm gonna go smoke some weed right now. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm sure they do. JFK is awesome. I like James too. I don't know how old James is. He's probably like 50, like me, but he looks like the cute little kid. Like he is cute. I see why all the ladies like him. He's just got this little. But don't get it twisted. He's not like soft or anything. He's a smart kid. He'll break me down in a second. Like I don't want any beef with James. I love James. I like them both. Yeah, they are funny. That's what they crack me up. That's what it's funny when I was on a show with a bunch of Karen Reed people at one point. And there was some people that, some people might be a little scared of as terms of creators. They're, whatnot, And I was like, the only one I'm afraid of on this panel is Auntie Deb, because comedians will destroy you. Like if people have comedy, like that's Turtle Boy, right? Turtle Boy and his little jokes, they'll just eat you alive. So I don't mess with people like James and JFK because they'll destroy you with comedy. Easy on the boomers. I love that they got the boomer love. I got the boomer love. I love boomers. I am feeling fine because we won last night. We won, Mary. We won big. And it wasn't just like, I thought it was going to be like, I was nervous. I really was. I was like, if we lose by 30 votes, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to get so angry. We won. It wasn't even close. I got the numbers. I didn't even care. It was like thousands of votes we won last night. Yes, disclaimer. All right, I really gotta go. I'm gonna go take probably like a week off. I don't even know. Whenever Karen Reed starts up, that's when I'll stop booking shows again. I feel like I need a break, and it's just like this was the perfect time actually. So like I'm gonna be ready as soon as Trial 2 starts up. We'll start hammering shows every night. Yeah, is there some turbulence in the chat? I don't know. I don't see any. I don't see any trolls in there. You know what got me fired up today too is the cannabis joint committee hearing today from the state house that not many people watch those when I broadcast them, but Lorna McMurray's mom spoke. Lorna died at age 27 at one of the cannabis dispensaries from basically her lungs not being able to breathe because there's so much dust in the air, and they don't check the air or have any health or safety standards at these dispensaries, these plants. And the CCC covered it up and did nothing. My reporting actually alerted the CCC commissioners to the issue. They didn't even know about it because their own commission covered it up. OSHA basically covered it up until we started reporting on it. Today, she spoke before the State House with the politicians. They have a bill. They want to protect workers. They want a hotline. They want some changes at the Cannabis Control Commission. She speaks before this commission, for this joint committee, this bunch of politicians. They don't even acknowledge her, really. They don't even ask her a single question. She lost her daughter, 27 years old. So that's one thing I got a little fired up about today. Yeah, rest in peace, Lorna. God bless her mom, Laura. She spoke. She was so good today. If you want to help, contact that joint committee of cannabis. Just Google it. Put it in your Yahoo and just search Mass Committee, Joint Committee on Cannabis, Massachusetts. It will pop up. Send them a message. Tell them they need to help cannabis workers, protect them because people are getting sick. We've had them on the show a lot in the past, and they're not doing anything to protect these workers. She died at 27 for no good reason, just because they wouldn't test the air. If they had tested the air, they would have known that there was an issue. If they had had some fans, just some fans. They put these people in these small little rooms, like the room I'm in right now, no ventilation. And then they grind up all this cannabis and it gets in the air, and they have no ventilation, no protection, no advice on how to protect themselves. And these young people die. They get sick. And one of them died. She had a heart attack, basically. So I'm getting tired of that too. So that's the only downer today. Is when I saw that they didn't even ask her a question about it. Yeah. So we may do some more on that too upcoming. We'll see. But it's frustrating. The state is just and when people say that they feel like there'll never be any justice, I feel you on some days. I do. But at the same time, we keep fighting. We keep going. Yeah, Lorna McMurray. I was the one who actually broke that story. I was the first one to report it. And then the people at the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission didn't even know about it. And I didn't report it until like 5 months after it happened. You know, like nobody knew about it. And when I looked into it, it got like as soon as I started covering it, I knew there was something up with it. And then the family started calling into the show. So that's when it kind of blew up for me. And I ended up being, covered in all these different national news outlets and even some locals. Even the Globe admitted I did good work on that one. But the thing of it was that, like, they covered it up and the state's still covering it up. And it was, when you look into it, it was totally preventable. She collapsed twice at work. She took 2 ambulance rides. After the first ambulance ride, the company should have done something. Company should have addressed it. OSHA should have done something about it. And after my show had worker after worker after worker on, this is before she died. I had dozens of workers on, and they were saying the same thing. Somebody's going to die. Somebody's actually going to die. And then she died. Her name was Lorna. And I had her parents on the show. And I had her cousin on the show. I had her aunt on the show. I had a coworker, Danny, on the show. So I feel you when you say justice won't be served. But we keep talking about it. We just keep talking, keep shaming these sorry sons of bitches at the State House and the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission who still haven't done anything about it. They're letting these workers get abused. No protection, no testing, no worker hotline. They've done nothing. What did they do? The Cannabis Control Commission fired Shannon O'Brien. That's what they did, because Shannon O'Brien was going to try to help the workers. They created a fake scandal about Shannon O'Brien, how she's racist and all this other bullshit. No, I feel you. Believe me, I feel you. You know, it's a sorry thing too of the cannabis industry. The reason why I get so frustrated, I don't even want to cover it anymore. You got all these economic empowerment people, all these suits getting up there, and they say, "Oh, we care about we want to help our workers. We need more licenses. We need to loosen the restrictions. We need to actually." Now they're saying they need to. Now the people with licenses are saying we need less licenses. We need to protect what we have for our workers. But none of them ever speak the name Lorna McMurray. Very few of them. None of them actually say, you know what, we need this hotline that the workers are here advocating for. And even the politicians. Politicians are all like, we're about social equity. What about the workers? What about the workers who are getting sick and dying, who predicted that someone would die, and then a 27-year-old died? And I am pro-cannabis. I fought for this law. Yeah, the unions are, and at the same time, the unions are getting blackballed. They're getting blocked. I work with UFCW. UFCW has actually sponsored the show because of what I did for Lorna and her family and cannabis workers. And so often, it's so funny. They got this woman up there. She was representing Ascend Cannabis. And she's talking about how they need to do this and that. And they care about workers. And they're union busters. They've union bust. They did. And not one of the state reps or state senators asked about it because they don't know what's going on. They're uninformed on what they have no clue. They got a woman from this company called Bud's Goods up there talking about the workers. They apparently allegedly withheld tips from their workers. We had to call that out. That was another one. So no, Lorna's family does not have a GoFund. I did do a fundraiser back in the day, an award show, and we did raise a little money that way, just a small amount to give her. But she's got a lawsuit. She's suing True Leaf, and I think someday she may own True Leaf. True Leaf is a truly evil corporation, and Lorna and her family, and her friend Danny and myself, we basically chased True Leaf out of the state. We got them out of here. They got so frustrated and so annoyed by all of what we were doing to expose their corruption, that company True Leaf that killed Lorna McMurray, they fled the state. They gave up their licenses. They were the first, they're top 2 cannabis, they're one of the top 2 cannabis corporations in the country. They are the first big company that I've ever seen leave a state. This was early. So think about that. They fled the state. I don't think they fled any other states. Yeah, boycott them. Yeah. Yeah, I was all psyched. I've been all amped up today. I've been all excited because I've been thinking about Susan. We won Susan. But then today I started watching this cannabis meeting and watching the way they treated Laura. It bugged me. Reminds me. We need to finish what was started. You know? Do the right thing for the workers. Yeah, that's it too. There's so much. It's a stranglehold of corruption, favoritism, nepotism, and you know about the cannabis industry is huge debts. The state made them spend so much money to open. Now these people want to recoup their investments, and they can't because there's competition. And so who gets the shaft? The workers' protection. Dan D just said $5. I thank you so much. I heard they had a contract. They would come on board to help them. That's why it was whitewashed. Yeah, True Leaf started in Florida. Look into how they started. The husband of the CEO just got out of federal jail. They basically had a scheme. That's why they started in Florida, and they basically got the most licenses there. And it was kind of a scam how they even pulled that off in Florida. The husband ended up in federal jail. Bribery. Yeah, True Leaf they're being sued too by not just Lorna McMurray. They've done a lot of shady things. I think their credit card processor actually is suing them right now. All right, I gotta go. You guys got me talking about True Leaf. I hope you enjoy the rant. But if you do want to help Lorna McMurray and her mom, contact the Joint Committee on Cannabis, the Massachusetts Joint Committee on Cannabis. It's at the State House. Just do a search on the internet. It'll pop right up. I'll even put it in the chat right now. Let me bring it up. Hold on. I'll bring it up. And I'll link it in the chat right now. And if you want to help, just send them a message. Send them an email. Send them a phone call. And they're looking for testimony right now. So just say, hey, I want to pass the bill that helps Lorna McMurray, so no one else dies like Lorna did at 27 at the cannabis grow facility. Protect workers. That's how you can help. All right, I'm going to go. If you missed the show, you catch the replay via replay. Via replay, full melt hash values. All right, I got to head out. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, supporting. We'll see you next time. Later.